This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, MICHAEL COVEL. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. So today on the show, I have Robert Greene. Robert is a best-selling author. He is famous for the 48 Laws of Power, a really cool book that I bought many moons ago that I'm going to tell him in a second how it inspired me. But he's also written The Art of Seduction, The 33 Strategies of War, and The 50th Law with 50 Cent. He's got a new book coming out called Mastery. Robert, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Michael. My pleasure.
So just to kind of fill you in, and I was telling you a little bit earlier, we are talking today because I had a chance to meet Ryan Holiday summer of 11, and Ryan has given me a lot of good insights and good advice, and I know you guys are close associates. So I have to, this roundabout small world of ours.
Yeah, well, Ryan was my sort of apprentice. I met him years ago. He's when he was about 19, 20 years old, and he started. He impressed me with a couple of jobs that I gave him, and then I had him do my research on the 50th Law and on this new book, and then got him a job at American Apparel where he's had a lot of responsibility running a marketing department there. And basically now kind of helped him with his writing career. And I keep telling people it's pretty soon I'm going to be working for Ryan. I'm going to be his apprentice because he's rising so quickly in the world.
Yeah, I know that feeling. And I tell people that when I'm talking about him, I was like, how the heck is he still under 30? That's not fair.
Well, I think he's 25,
Right. That's not fair.
No.
Well, listen, let me let you establish a couple things. I tell you what, let me tell you something about myself real quick. So I write trading books, specifically about a strategy called trend following. And it's amazing the parallels and a lot of the work that you do. But when I first did my book, I was a no-name author in 2004. My first book sold over 100,000 copies in the trading space. Not the 48 Laws of Power numbers, which are over 1 million, but still a good number.
Very good.
But anyways, when I was putting my book together, I had all these ideas about how I wanted the interior pages to look. And I forgot this, but I realized when I was trying to convince my publisher at Pearson many moons ago that I wanted to have quotes in the side margins.
Oh.
And I just had the memory recollection of like how I was influenced by it, and I had long forgotten, and I don't know if I ever gave proper credit, but it was definitely by your book. And the funny thing is the publisher fought me tooth and nail about doing that idea.
Yeah.
And then when the book came out, I remember talking to one of the biggest fund managers in the world, and the first thing he says to me, the thing I like about your book the most? Those side margin quotes.
Wow.
So,
well,
anyway,
you stole that from me.
I stole it. But hey, I'm admitting it, right?
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, it's something I think I kind of created. I mean, I've seen in other books, mostly old books from 100 years ago. I've never really seen it since then, and I'm kind of, I'm a bit proud of it. We didn't do this on the new book because it's a very expensive process, but I think it's a powerful way of communicating where you have the text and then these other kind of quotes sort of commenting on the text.
No, I agree, and I guess my stealing would have been almost 9 years ago. So don't hold.
Well, I thank you for confessing, and it's fine, and I forgive you.
So listen, let me go back on one thing, and I know for people that have not seen the 48 Laws of Power, I even if they've not seen it, they can from that title they can deduce certain things. And I think for people that perhaps come from certain understandings, the idea of that there might be 48 laws of obtaining power could be something where they instantly have that feeling of their stomach of like, oh, I really don't want to go there. However, you make a really interesting point with it. It's like, hey, look. Whether you apply these for your gain or you apply these for your defense, it's very, very wise thinking. Why don't you talk to that for a second? The idea of using the 48 Laws of Power to protect yourself.
Well, that's really sort of the main purpose in a way. I mean, some of the laws you're going to be finding your applying, kind of in the sense, almost in a marketing sense of learning how to persuade people and influence them, which is something we all need to do. And there are many, many laws about that kind of seductive side of power. But then, a lot of us, we come out of college, high school, wherever, and we're not really prepared for the high level politicking and maneuvering and the egos and the manipulations that can go on in the work world. And if we ourselves aren't aggressive people, we'll often find ourselves the victims of these things, and it can take a toll. And I myself was sort of like that. I wasn't really prepared for it all. And nobody really talks about it. No books are really written about it. Your parents don't really talk about it. Your bosses don't talk about it. You're just left there to sort of sink or swim on your own. And so I wrote these laws mostly for people who may not really be the sharks in themselves, but they need to know what the sharks around them might be doing. So, for instance, there's a law in there about get others to do the work, but always take the credit. And it's not that's it's a dark law, and I'm not advocating that you go out and do that. I'm saying this is what's going to happen to you, particularly if you're just starting out in a career. Your people are going to make you do a lot of work, and then they're going to put their name on it. Now, how do you handle that? If you get defensive and upset and angry, it could cost you your position. If you're naive and a colleague takes your work and puts their name on it, well, now you're in trouble. You just need to be aware that this is what's going on, not paranoid, just aware, and there's a big difference. So I think you're right. A lot of what I'm talking about is sort of a defensive thing to protect yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think and the interesting thing too, and I want to, if before we jump into your new book, I'm just trying to lay this foundation so people that might not be familiar with your work get a foundation. If I was to go to your early time growing up, so here you are now, you're a best-selling author, they send limos and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, I don't know if they do this or not, but anyways, what was Robert Greene thinking and doing as a young man, a very young man, as a teen? What was your approach? And we mentioned that Ryan started mentoring under you as a teenager. What were you doing as a teenager? Lay the foundation out for people to understand some of the process that you went to before you even got to the point to write the 48 Laws of Power.
Well, I'm not like Ryan. I'm a bit of a late bloomer in the sense that I essentially began writing on the 48 Laws of Power when I think I was 37 years old. And prior to that, if you're going back to my teen years, I mean, I went to University of Wisconsin at Madison, and I was very excited by writing, literature, and history. I studied a lot of languages and ancient history. I've always been intrigued by the fact that when you read about something in the Renaissance or Cesare Borgia or Julius Caesar, the kind of drama of it seems timeless. The fact that someone makes some terrible mistake and they're beheaded for it, it seems kind of similar to a lot of things that you might witness in the world around you with not such dire consequences. So that had always been a way I've been thinking. And then I was sort of a little bit wandering. I wasn't quite sure. I started off in I lived in Europe for a while. I did many, many different kinds of jobs. Then I worked in journalism. I was always wanting to be a writer, but I couldn't find the right match. So journalism wasn't right. I tried television. That wasn't right. I tried Hollywood. Wasn't really happy. And then finally, in about 1995 or so, this man asks me that I was in Italy. We were working on a project together. He asked me if I had any ideas for books. He's a book packager. And at that moment, I kind of must have realized that this was the actual fit for me. In writing books, I could bring all of my experience in living in other cultures, in reading so much about history, in all of the research skills that I had and my knowledge of, I think, of human nature and psychology. It was the right fit. And I tell people all the time, it's not a matter of luck. It's a matter of you're prepared for an opportunity. Your opportunities are going to come to you at any moment that could be probably happening right now. It's if you're prepared, if you've built up skills, if you're eager and you haven't given up, and you know that that something will happen, it will happen. And that's sort of, the story of my life. So, and in some ways, blooming late is not a bad thing, particularly for a writer, because once the success happened, I was very able to handle it, and I knew that I was not going to let this opportunity go away. I was going to exploit it to the fullest. And if it had happened when I was in my 20s, I might not have had that kind of desperate energy.
Oh, I love that phrase, desperate energy. I can relate to you. You're my cousin with that phrase. I love it. Let me speak to the opportunity aspect, because here, people are going to have to go out and read it. We're not going to sit here and go through all 48 laws or anything today on your first book. But when you talk to the opportunity part, I've not read this book of yours. You have a book called The 50th Law that you wrote with rapper 50 Cent. And if I'm reading your version of opportunity correctly, here you put the 48 laws of power out. I'm sure, at least I'm guessing, you did not, as you were writing that book, think that the hip hop community would become these loyal supporters of your book. And I'm guessing that support that you could not have foreseen ultimately led to a relationship with 50 Cent, which ultimately led to another book. Am I reading you correctly in terms of how these things unfold?
Yes, I mean, I had absolutely zero conscious attempt at appealing to the hip hop community. The book was just a very truthful effort on my part to express what I think happens in the realm of power, in politics, in business, and even in culture and academia. And because I think it was truthful and honest, it hit a core with a lot of African Americans, particularly people like 50 who were coming up, trying to make a name for themselves, not just as rappers, but as business people and entrepreneurs, where they could control the business side of their music. And they found the book really refreshing because they don't have MBAs. They've not gone to business school. Not that an MBA will prepare you for the 48 laws, but they found the book extremely helpful in dealing with some hardcore business matters. And the thing is, when I heard about this several years after the book came out, I was genuinely excited about it. I loved the fact that it had that appeal to them. I thought it was a really good match. I'm not a hip hop person, but I just thought that I understood it really well, and I went with it. A lot of people might have just thought, this is kind of interesting, but I really went with it because I wanted to explore why they were so interested in the 48 laws, how they were applying it. And so I developed this relationship with 50 Cent. He had come to me because he was a big fan of the 48 laws. And we cultivated a friendship, and out of that, a book came. And in spending 5-6 months sort of attached to his side, following him around, I could see how much the book meant to him, how he used it in his day-to-day life, but also how he was sort of a natural at it. A lot of the laws of power come easily to him. And out of this really interesting relationship, we wrote, I think, a really great book about fearlessness. The 50th Law is about what can happen to you, the good things that can happen to you if you can conquer these sort of 10 different primal fears that we all have. So I think it was just being excited and open to this new sort of market that I could explore.
Well, let me take that a little bit deeper real quick before we jump into mastery, because I think for those out there in the audience, and I've got a diverse audience, I know it's different ages, different races, but I'm sure there's some in my audience that, are the blue blazer, 3 gold button country club folks. And they might not exactly be sitting there saying, hey, Coveil, 50 Cent, I remember the song in the club, but what does this have to do with me? This guy was shot how many times? I mean, he might have dealt drugs. And can you put a story or something concrete that someone that's sitting out there that immediately wants to dismiss the idea of a hip hop guy who's rose from a very low place to a very high place, but they still might want to have something in their psyche that doesn't want to accept that success or accept those lessons. Can you paint a picture for your time spent with him that would really resonate with the skeptic out there?
Well, I tell people that now, at least at 50, it sort of inspired the book on mastery, and that he kind of fits the paradigm that I explore in the book. It might be Da Vinci and Einstein that I'm writing about, or Steve Jobs or someone, but he very much fits the paradigm. And if you look at him, he grows up without any parents. His mother was murdered when he was 8 years old. He's raised by his grandparents. He has no adult supervision. And he's very ambitious. Now, we can all understand from a young age being ambitious, at least some of us can. But whereas as somebody who's 8 years old without parents living in the worst part of Queens, where can he possibly hope to channel that energy and that drive? Well, the school is useless. He knows that anybody that goes to school ends up flipping burgers at McDonald's. So he decides it's got to be hustling. And he realizes quickly enough, he's dealing drugs, that it's a boring, violent, unglamorous, unromantic profession. He's interested in the business aspect of it, oddly enough. He sees that there's some interesting business lessons that can be learned dealing drugs, but since that's the only avenue open to him, he explores it. And once he realizes at the age of 16, because he's so ambitious, that really the only way he is going to get out of the hood, Curtis Jackson, out of this dangerous world, is through music. It's the only possible outlet for him. He's not going to go to law school or whatever. So this is it. And he's not into the bling. He's never himself done drugs. He doesn't drink. He's this disciplined person. And once he finds the right mentor, which is something straight out of my new book, Mastery, this is Jam Master Jay, one of the great rappers in history, and he apprentices under him, and he's extremely serious. And once he gets a record deal with Columbia, his first record deal, he treats it like a university. He goes there every day and he studies the production side, the business side. He becomes a master at not just rapping, but at how to market your work. And then later, when he gets shot, soon after that, nearly dies. It's from an old beef having to do with dealing drugs, which he's left. His career's finished. You know, there's no more record label. They drop him. There's too much violence. He's finished. He's through. He could easily have just given up and died at that point, and he didn't. He decided that he would run an incredible mixtape campaign on the streets of New York and launch his career on his own, using all of the skills he had developed as a hustler. He doesn't deny that, as someone who learned how to rap, as someone who learned the business. And it's sort of like, I think a lot of people in the tech world and in hacking and people on the internet can understand, going directly to his customers, to his clients, to his audience with this street campaign. It made him who he is today. He's an amazing person from where he came from to who he is today. And there's so many lessons to be learned about the right attitude, about seriousness, about how to learn, about how to be disciplined, and how to be fearless, that I don't think anybody should dismiss it. I think dismissing it is a sign that you yourself have a problem. You're making categories where there shouldn't be categories anymore, and we need to look at America's a great country because of our entrepreneurial spirit, and people like Thomas Edison and Henry Ford, they came from the lowest classes. They had no education. So we should be celebrating people like 50 and not dismissing them.
Yeah. I saw somebody in my Facebook recently, and I think I used an intro to a Jay-Z song for a podcast, and I got some flack from a couple people, and I was just like, are you serious? Are you really? Yeah. Are you serious? Do you know who he is? Do you know where he's come from? Do you know what he's done? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Do you know I'm an entrepreneur? Do you know I respect entrepreneurism? There's all kinds of folks out there. Listen, let's jump into mastery and talk some about it. So I'm going to lay out just a really basic predicate. You were mining essentially the biographies of historical figures. That I'm going to let you jump from there. And expand more the thought process of why you created this book, why you wrote this book.
Well, just to add to that, I did look at a lot of the greatest masters in history and mine their biographies, but I decided to do something a little different in this book, in that I chose 9 contemporary people to interview, 9 contemporary masters, including Paul Graham, who's the starter of Y Combinator. Some of your audience might know about that. Santiago Calatrava, the great architect, Freddie Roach, the incredible boxing trainer of Manny Pacquiao. I interviewed 9 of these, and I incorporated them all together. But the premise is that through all of my research over all of the years, and I'm talking about thousands upon thousands of hours spent reading biographies and stories of the most powerful, highest achieving people in history, I had noticed a pattern and a trend that these people had developed a kind of intelligence that was different from normal intelligence. They were highly creative. They could make connections between ideas that nobody was doing. They had an intuitive, quick grasp of what the situation was. Somebody like a Napoleon Bonaparte on the battlefield had this kind of feel for battle that was remarkable. And I noticed that a lot of these people had essentially mastered their field. After 10, 20, 30 years of experience, they had reached another level, a really powerful level of intelligence. And so I wanted to write a book based on all of this knowledge that I had. And in researching about these great masters, I made a discovery that I think is very interesting. Maybe it's startling. I don't know. Which is essentially what leads them to this power is not genius, is not talent, is not luck, is not some gift that they have. It's not that they have a bigger brain. They went through a process. They went through an apprenticeship. They mentored with the right people. They learned, they knew how to observe what was happening around them. They absorbed all of the rules that go on in their field. They developed incredible amounts of skills. They had failures, many failures. I talk in the book about Henry Ford, I think a classic icon of being an entrepreneur. He tried to create an automobile company, and twice it failed, which normally would be the death blow for anybody in the early years of the automobile business. He kept trying. He tried a third time, and it worked. So a lot of these people failed. They're human. They're not superhuman, but they went through a process. And by illuminating this process in the book in extremely clear terms, the chapters take you through in a sort of a sequential fashion. I make it clear to you that you can equal or come closer to this kind of power that they have. It's not a mystery. It's not rocket science. And I want to sort of inspire you to attempt it. And I want to show you how to do it. And I make the point, I hope, well, in the book, that in the world that we're living in today, where it's so complicated, so competitive, there's so much information we all have to absorb, that mastering your field is really actually the only way you're ever going to achieve something, that you're going to have the kind of success that you want. Because this is a world where you have to depend on yourself and on your own creative energies, and you have to not be overwhelmed by the complexity of what's going on. And this is a book, I think, that fits into our times because of the amount of something like the internet. Da Vinci, if he wanted to learn about the world, he had such limited access to information. We have a million times more access to it. So I think we could be heading towards a new renaissance if we understand better this process.
You said something in your comments there that I think is really important. I mean, you're talking to an individual, myself, who my entire career has been built off essentially helping people to understand one particular technical quantitative trading strategy. And it's one very specific thing. And I noticed that you've got the comment that it's the love for one thing that can ultimately lead to a mastery. But I think there's probably people out in the audience who are struggling with the idea. I don't struggle with it. I wake up every day, I know what I'm going to do. But there's people out there that I'm sure that are struggling with the idea of how to even find the love for one thing.
Well, I make the point in the book that there's not one single clear, direct path to mastery. There are several paths. And as you point out correctly, you must have love for what you're doing. There's no way you're going to be able to have the patience to go through the hours of practice, of the boredom and the tedium of developing skills, there's always tedious activity in anything. Even in writing, there certainly is. And the only way you're going to survive and do well is if you love it, because that will push you forward. That will excite you. That will motivate you. When you're in love with a woman, you're paying deep attention to what she says. When you love your field, you pay deeper attention. But it's not like you have to suddenly realize there's one thing that I love, and what is it? It could be, there are a couple of things that you love. For me, it was writing and history. And then I managed to combine them. I found the perfect way to combine them. I talk in the book of this woman, a great engineer, robotics engineer, Yoki Matsuoka, who's now doing green technology. For her, it was robots and computers and neuroscience, and then or biology. She found a way to combine those interests. They all have a kind of a core to them. And the key is to look at yourself, to go back to your childhood, to look at the fields that really excite you in a primal way. They make you have a curiosity. When you read about them, you're not bored. In fact, you want to read books. You go out of your way to go to the library or the bookstore or Amazon to get books on that subject. Things that excite you in some kind of primal way are essentially giving you a sign that this is what you were meant to do. But the thing you have to realize is you don't suddenly come to the conclusion after studying law and becoming a lawyer that, hey, I loved playing the guitar and music when I was a kid, I'm now going to become a rock musician. That's not at all what we're talking about. You can say that law isn't where I should have gone. I went in there because my parents told me that this was going to be a lucrative position, and I'm bored, and I know that if I keep doing this, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to be burned out, and I'm going to be losing my hair, and it's not good. It's not that you totally give up and go into something unrelated. You build on the skills that you have. So maybe now you decide to go into the legal aspect of music, or you decide to become a writer about music, that now you can you find a way to combine the skills. You don't give them up. You don't waste valuable years of your time. You just have to be clear about what really excites you in life and find a way to head on a career path in which you can move closer and closer to what I call this natural inclination that you have towards your field.
You know, I hope people are hearing this in your voice. I mean, I hear it because you remind me of myself. You are clearly not motivated by how much they're going to pay you. Oh, it's nice that they write you a big check and all that kind of stuff. But you wake up each day, I'm guessing, probably on fire to just do something, to create something. You don't ever wake up and say, what do I have to? It's not a chore. It's not a task. Yeah. You awake and say, I'm alive. I'm going to do something. It's the moment of now. Let's go.
Yeah. And, it's really interesting, Michael, because in reading a lot of these people, particularly the contemporary ones, money is never the prime motivation. And I'm not making that up. I'm not trying to create a fairy tale here. These people are motivated by something really exciting about their work. Paul Graham is someone who's really excited by the challenge of tech startups. And he now has a business that's worth $5 billion. We know, if we've read the biography of Steve Jobs out there, which is an excellent biography, this man was not motivated by money. It's clear. It's repeated 1,000 times. He never even bought furniture for his house. He lived in a rather normal house. Money was never his prime motivation. It was excellence. It was making the best designed computer. And he would drive other people crazy, but he was not motivated by money. The money will come to you. It will come to you. It will come to you more than you'll ever need, more than you'll ever want, if you pay attention to that right career path that fits you. See, to me, the greatest danger that you face in the career world right now is that you're replaceable. Somebody else can come along and do your job. You may be able to fake it when you're in your 20s because you're young and you're excited and everything. But by the time you're 40, there's going to be someone younger who can do the job cheaper and better, and they're more connected to what's going on in the world. You have to be somebody who's unique. You have a unique skill set. There's not another person like you out there, which is something that we can say about Steve Jobs or Paul Graham or Yoki Matsuoka or these other people I'm talking about. If you're heading in that direction and you're unique and you have unique skills and you're creative, the money will come, but it will only come if you are motivated and excited by what you do.
And I think the audience has to see that too, whoever the audience is. If the audience sees fake, it's never going to work. If they see real, you've got a chance.
I call that, excuse me if I can remember it correctly, the primary law of the creative dynamic. I know it sounds long, but I have a chapter in there about creativity. And the idea is the energy you put into your work, and any work is obviously creative. It's not just writing books. It's business is highly creative. The energy you put into your work, the attitude that you have, is translated into the work itself. It's translated in a way that's unconscious. People react to it. And if you're excited, it has a way of making them excited. If you're after money and it's just kind of you're going through the numbers and you're just sort of doing a gimmick, you might be able to fake some people, but most people see through it. They unconsciously see through the gimmickry. So you can't really fake people in the long run. So the energy that you have, the creative impetus, the desire you have to communicate or create some great product will be translated in the product itself in some way. And so you can't fake it. You really can't fake it. And that's why it's so important to follow this path that I'm talking about and sort of maximize the natural powers that you have and that uniqueness that I was talking about, those inclinations.
So when did you start studying Buddhism?
Well, it's not that I studied Buddhism. In writing about war, I've always been interested in Zen. It's not Buddhism per se that interests me. It's meditation and Zen and concentration and focus. And when I was writing the war book, I got very heavily into the warrior mentality that Zen Buddhism promoted in the samurai period. And the reason samurais got attracted to Zen was how incredibly well it could help you to focus your mind and not be afraid of death. And as someone who has those fears and who's someone who yearns for that kind of focus in my own work, I got really excited about it. And so I went deeper into it. And when I decided to write this book, I knew that it would be a very difficult task. I had a lot of material to cover. I had a lot of, it would not be easy, and it was going to be draining experience. So I decided to take up meditation, particularly Zen meditation. And I stuck to it with incredible rigor, half hour every morning, sometimes an hour every day if I can. And it's helped me immensely. I can't tell you how important meditation of any sort can be in your life. We're all way too stressed. We're all way too distracted. We have too much information. The ability to empty your mind, relax, focus on things that are actually more important is just so therapeutic. So that's really more my interest. And in reading about Zen, I read a lot about it. You do go into some of the more ancient texts and koans about Zen Buddhism, but really my interest is in the meditation and the power that you can have when you learn how to focus.
I started yoga about 5 months ago, and it's the only thing I've ever experienced in my life that by the end of a practice, I can be clear. I literally don't have anything left in my mind. Right. And that feeling, that moment is, I think I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life looking to stay in that moment as much as I possibly can.
Yes, I used to do a lot of yoga. I injured myself, but if I hadn't, I would have continued on. But anything like that, and I also do a lot of sports. I do a lot of swimming, and I find in swimming I'm able to completely take my mind off everything and just sort of be there in the water in the moment. Anything that you can do in which you can get, just take your mind off of your thoughts and thought patterns is going to have incredible benefit.
I can't keep you all morning, but I know we could, because we could talk. I could sit here and literally with the notes in front of me, we could talk about every book for all morning, but we can't do that. But I want to get back into mastery, because that is your new book coming out. And you mentioned Freddie Roach, you mentioned Manny Pacquiao, and I think that's perhaps a great jumping off point. I'm sure there's a lesson, something that can wet the whistle for people to say, wow, I really want to know more about his trainer. Let people into that window and talk about how that happened, how that even came to be.
Well, I wanted to get a sports figure in there. I thought about certain athletes, but I thought it was more interesting to go after a coach who would have the strategic aspect, and also whose career wasn't usually just 10 to 12 years. And I thought of Phil Jackson, and he wouldn't have ever done this, or Bill Belichick. But what I decided I wanted to do a boxing trainer, because it's a one-on-one relationship, and you can clearly see the effect that the trainer can have on the boxer. It's not like it's a team sport. The connection is much clearer. And Freddie Roach is by far and away so superior to any other boxing trainer out there. It's actually quite astounding. And so I was, I'm a boxing fan. I love Manny Pacquiao. I think he's an amazing athlete. So I approached them, and they were happy to do it. The thing about Freddie that I think is so interesting, why is he so clearly superior? I mean, it's statistic. It's not just my subjective idea. The winning percentage of his fighters is by far and away superior to any other trainer. He's been awarded Boxing Trainer of the Year 5 times, and it's only been in existence 10 years or 15. I don't know how long, but no one's close to that. So statistically, he's superior. The interesting thing is, when you go into it and you get into the story, is we've all heard about the 10,000 hours stuff from Outliers, et cetera. And Freddie Roach, I think, approaches 30,000 hours. He started training. He was a boxer basically his father was a boxer. By the age of 6, he was fighting in amateur fights. So from 6 to 18, Freddie Roach was training boxing almost every day and fighting fights. He then turns pro at the age of 18. Trains with Eddie Futch. He has a career for about 8 years. He fights over 50 bouts in 8 years. And if you do the math, that's like not a heavyweight, but a professional boxing match every 2 months, And this is a gym rat. So this is a guy that was training every day, fighting every 2 months. You don't how many boxers out there fight every 2 months? So by the time his career is finished, he's amassed insane amount of hours boxing, training, knowing the sport. And he decides to he kind of falls into becoming a trainer. He apprentices under his the man who coached him. And basically, the years that he had spent boxing give him such a deeper level of understanding of the sport that when it comes to creating his own training method, he creates something that just doesn't exist. He creates a new form of training using these gloves, these mitts that allows the trainer to fight in the ring. He creates a whole new way of analyzing the opponent. I mean, on and on and on. He brings incredible creativity, and he revolutionizes the sport. And by the time Manny Pacquiao comes into his gym in the year 2000 in Hollywood, no one else thought much of Manny Pacquiao. He was a boxer in the Philippines who, I think he was a bantamweight. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. He was good. He had a good left hand, but that was about it. But Freddie, because he got in the ring with him and used the mitts to train, he could sense that this guy had a punch that was just insane, and he could see that there was incredible potential there. And so you can't work with Manny Pacquiao has incredible skills to work with, but basically Freddie Roach made him into the beast that he is, and it's a clear example of what a person can achieve in this world if you love what you do, which he loves boxing. He was made to train more than to box. If you love what you do and you spend enough hours at it and enough years, you're going to reach a level that nobody else has ever attained. And Freddie Roach is probably, in my book, the clearest, best example of what can happen to someone with no education. He comes from the worst parts of Boston. You can achieve if you have the dedication and the persistence and the love of what you do.
How does it make you feel when you dig into putting together a book like Mastery, where you're looking at these different walks of life, these different characters, these different types of achievement? How does it make you feel to where you have this aha moment where you can see the correlations, you can see the parallels from these different walks of life? How does that make you feel as just as a finder of these parallels?
Well, it's extremely exciting. It's a very satisfying intellectual process where you're making connections between things and you're discovering them. You probably hit on something. It's probably the most satisfying thing that I do. So, for instance, I have hundreds of books that I've read for this. I've got all this material. And I'm pouring through biographies, and it becomes clear to me as I'm writing the book that there is actually there's one thing I could put my finger on that is sort of the source of this power, of why people become masters, of why Mozart becomes Mozart or Steve Jobs becomes Steve Jobs. I can actually pinpoint it. I feel that I know it. And what that discovery was that I call it your uniqueness, your primal uniqueness. Literally every single human is born unique. The DNA that you have has never occurred in the past, will never occur in the future. Combined with your experiences as you get older makes you even more and more unique. And a master is someone who stays true to that. They understand from a very early age that there's something about them that's different. They use that and pursue it in a field or some kind of endeavor with a lot of dedication and practice. And by the time they get into their 30s or whatever, and they start becoming really creative with what they've learned, that uniqueness comes out in their work. It's like a stamp. And no matter what they do, that stamp of their personality is on it. It comes through or a watermark. It comes through and is very powerful. But it stems from the fact that they stay true to what made them unique in their childhood. I talk in the book about Charles Darwin, one of the icons in the book. He was not smart in school. His father thought he was going to be a loser. He kind of was despaired about what could ever happen. He was going to get young Charles a career in the church. But Charles Darwin knew from when he was a little boy that he loved the outdoors, collecting specimens and looking at butterflies and beetles and flowers. And he found a way to make his own weird kind of career out of being a naturalist and studying these things until he became a master. I can go on and give you a million different examples, but discovering that sort of single source of power and mastery was a very exciting moment for me and makes me really want to try and share it with the world.
As you're talking, I'll just share a really brief experience of mine. About 15 years ago, maybe it's a little bit longer, Barings Bank went belly up, and there was a guy named Nick Leeson, and he lost all this money. It was the Queen's Bank over in England, and the bank went under, and he was on the front cover of Time and yada, yada, yada. Well, nobody was talking about who won the money. Everyone was talking about who lost the money. Nick Leeson lost the money. Well, I spent all of my waking time trying to figure out who the winner was.
And who was it?
The winner was a guy named John W. Henry, who was he was a trader, and he essentially used the money that he won from the Barings Bank loss to buy the Boston Red Sox. And he's the current owner of the Boston Red Sox. But I, like a maniacal, crazy person, I spent nearly a year in the midst of trying to get clues from hedge fund managers, all managing over $1 billion, who really didn't want to talk to me, trying to get clues to piece this together as to who won. And I actually went out on a limb in my first book and just declared him the winner, which was probably a little risky, but I was actually right. So I relate to your idea of this kind of this pursuit of the aha moment, this inquisitiveness, this curiousness. And I think curious is a really word, because I'm imagining you've got to be one of the most curious guys around, or at least you like to think of yourself that way, right?
Yes, definitely. But I'm curious to know what was your impetus in uncovering this story. What initially excited you so much?
I think it was just that I kind of got some hints that it had happened early in 1995. and I wasn't able to confirm it for 12 months.
Oh.
And so it was literally a 12-month confirmation to where I could finally prove it in my head. And it was just fascinating to me because, like, you know how media works, and we could look at Ryan's book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, and his views of the media and what he's figured out. And I just sat there and I said, my gosh, why is no one talking about the winner? And then, less than a decade later, he used the winnings to buy the Boston Red Sox. I thought it's a great story.
And did you wrote something about it?
But my first book, called Trend Following, was literally a chapter on this and how that happened.
It's very exciting. I have to get that book. That's a great story.
It's fun stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, have you had any experience with your books in the world of money managers and traders coming, not unlike the hip hop community approached you? Have you had experiences like that?
I can't really say. I'm sure there have been. I've had people who work in finance that I've done consulting with, but they're usually working for the larger brokerage firms. I don't really have. I'm sure there are people, the hedge fund managers, which is such a highly competitive 48 laws of power realm. I'm sure they are. I just know I don't. I'd love to, though.
They don't want to admit to it. That's the real issue. We know.
Yeah, we were in fact going to do a version of the 48 Laws of Power for television, sort of for HBO. As a project that went pretty far, but as usual in Hollywood, died at the end. And it took place in that world, in the hedge fund, that world in New York, and it would have been great, but we didn't make it go.
Well, listen, we got to wrap up. I know I can't keep you. I know you got things to run to, more interviews, all kinds of fun stuff for this new book. What do you want to leave people with of the biggest thing that makes you so excited? All this time, years of work, tons of research that went into this new book, Mastery. Why and how can it inspire them? Bottom line, how make their life better? Such an easy question.
Have world peace. I think there's a lot of practical advice in the book. It's geared to really help, not just inspire you, but to really show you how you could apply these ideas in a practical way. But that said, I think that what a lot of us are missing in the world today is a kind of a sense of direction and purpose. I don't think just wanting money and comfort is enough to motivate you and give you a sense of purpose and direction. Religion plays a part, but for some people, a lot of us increasingly, it's not really the major focus in our life. And it can be very debilitating and difficult to find yourself not really knowing where you're headed. When you're young, maybe you don't care so much about that, but as you get older, it can be depressing, and it can be like, life is short, and where am I going, and who's telling me where I should go? I'm not getting that from anyone. And the book is designed to actually help supply that for you. It's not a spiritual thing, although there is an element there. It's the fact that you were born to do something. You were born to create something. It came from that uniqueness that I'm talking about. You have natural creative energy. It's built into the human brain. The human brain is a dual processing system where ideas that come in and information is constantly being associated and connected to other information. And when we're children, that kind of natural connectivity where one idea is connecting to another is kind of in higher gear. The brain is naturally focused for that creative energy. You yourself were born sort of to maximize it in some way, to achieve something. And to waste that, to feel like you wasted it, like you didn't get there, or at least try to get there, is a bad feeling. And so there's always still time, unless you're in your 60s or 70s, but to reassess your life and to say, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to try and realize what it was that I was meant to accomplish, what makes me different, where my creative energies can go. And it can be in business and being an entrepreneur or being a hedge fund manager. I don't care. knowing that path and knowing how you can do something unique and creative is a real motivating device, and it really helps you get up in the morning and really gives you focus and really helps you say, this is my goal 5 or 10 years down the line. There's nothing wrong in our high-powered, fast world to set like realistic goals and aim for them. So I think, if I'm going to tell you something, the book isn't Tuesdays with Maury. It's not a spiritual book. I'm not trying to deceive you. It's a very practical book on mastery. But the sense of feeling like you got direction and you're sort of in control of your life, what we could call self-mastery, is a great feeling. And I think I want to help people get closer to that.
Well, listen, Robert, you're a great storyteller. I'm sure people would want to listen for many more hours. But obviously the book is coming out mid-November. Is there a date set for the final release?
It's November 13.
Okay.
If you visit, well, I don't know when this is coming out, but at powerseductionandwar.com, that's my website. Power, Seduction, and War. The "and" is spelled out. You can pre-order the book on Amazon, and you can get some sort of bonus material that Ryan and myself have put together. But yeah, it'll be out on November 13th.
Okay, well, great. Listen, it's all, not only your website, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere. Everybody, take a read, take a look. Robert, I appreciate your time today. I think everyone will enjoy this, and the podcast will be up later today. So, really? Yes, I appreciate it. But
very so. Well, then I should definitely make that message. If you go to that website and pre-order the book, you can either pre-order 1, 3, 5 copies. The more you order, the more goodies you get. You'll get the supplementary material that we've put together, some extra essays that I wrote about the writing of the book itself, and extended bibliography and transcripts of the interviews and stuff like that.
Passion is infectious. I love it, Robert. Have a great day, man.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. That was great.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.